F-35 versus the Su-57. This might be the closest matchup of these 4.5 to 5 generation fighters during this series that I've done on this channel out of all the different comparisons I've done. So in this video, we're going to specifically look at what it would be like to be the fighter pilot in each one of these jets in a BVR situation and then a within visual range situation, and what would be going through your mind, what you would be thinking of and potentially actioning off of being each one of the different pilots. So stay to the end for that. So when it comes to the differences, obviously there's big differences between these two fighter jets, but the F-35 is a single pilot platform, so is the Su-57. The F-35 is going to have a single Pratt & Whitney engine, whereas the Su-57 is going to have a twin engine setup, with the Izadeli 30 engine being the new native Russian built engine that's going to be installed on all the Su-57s essentially from now moving forward to order completion in 2028, when they're expected to get 70 to 80 of these things. At least that's what's planned for now. When it comes to the F-35, there's many more of these things. There's over 500 of them. So these are going to be the backbone of the USA's fleet moving forward and replacing the F-16. But you might be asking yourself, hey, with a single engine setup, what's the survivability of these things? Well, the engine reliability is exceptional, but at the end of the day, they do account for attrition. So 532, they may account for 2 or 3% of these things actually crashing due to the single engine setup. But when you look at the cost overall, if they were to have had 2 of these engines in all the F-35s, the cost of that would greatly outnumber the 2 or 3% that might crash due to the engines not being twin, not having the twin engine setup. So it's well worth it in the long run when you look at the overall scheme of the budget. So back to the differences, when you think of the F-35, it's really built to focus on that low observability, or LO. That is the big name of the game for the F-35, to be that 5th generation fighter that looks like a mosquito or a hummingbird on the enemy radar to where they don't even know that it exists. But when it comes to the Su-57, that's more of an aircraft that's a 4.5 generation stealth variant, where it's not really stealthy. And there's been talks about making the new ones more stealthy, integrating some of the bumps and the different nodes and the protrusions that are on it, maybe trying to make those flush with the fuselage. But what they've done is they've kind of also banked on a radar absorbent material, which is decent, but it's not as good as getting all those bumps, all those nooks, all those things that are sticking out, getting those flush to where they don't protrude at all. That's what's really going to make it more of a 5th generation fighter. But it's really meant to be more of a missile truck to get out there and fight against 4th generation fighters. So to go up against the F-15, the F-18, and the F-16. It's not really meant to go up against the F-35 from a stealth perspective. We'll get more into the actual beyond visual range and within visual range dogfight here in a second. But when it comes down to what that thing's built for, it's definitely built more for maneuverability in close. So when you see in Top Gun Maverick, when that thing flies past Rooster and Maverick, that's no kidding what the Soviets are thinking it might do one day. I happen to disagree, but at the end of the day, that is part of why they built it. They want it to be ultra maneuverable in game when it's teeth to teeth, head to head, mano a mano, and they want that thing to be able to outmaneuver any 4th generation fighter. When it comes to the technology, the F-35 has basically a 360-degree target detection system where the pilot can look in all directions, including behind him or her, and lock onto something just by looking at it. Whereas the Su-57 is going to depend more on infrared and other sensors to get lock on. The F-35 kind of has this suite that goes 360 degrees around it, which might give it the advantage to actually getting a lock on in the within visual range environment. When it comes to the payload, again, both of these are essentially multi-role fighters, which is different than probably what we've been told before, where we think maybe the Su-57 was built to compete with the F-22. In my opinion, it's more of a competitor with the F-35. The F-35 can actually carry more of a payload if you load up the wings with pylons. You're looking at about 18,000 pounds of air-to-air munitions and air-to-ground munitions, whereas the Su-57 is going to top out right around 14,000 pounds or so, so nothing to shake a stick at. But at the end of the day, the F-35 is going to outpower it with firepower. Both of these are combat-proven aircraft, with the F-35 seeing more action than the Su-57, but the Su-57 has seen air-to-air and air-to-ground action, the air-to-ground action most recently happening in Syria. The speed is relatively similar, with the F-35 topping out somewhere around 1,200 miles per hour. The Su-57 has a little bit of an advantage, topping out at around 1,400 to 1,500 miles per hour. But when it comes to maneuverability, the F-35 is definitely going to take a backseat to the Su-57. So the Su-57 can rotate in space, essentially like a little mini helicopter, whereas the F-35 is going to maneuver much more like the F-16, and it's actually going to bleed off energy a little more than the F-16 will, just due to its guppy-like shape and having those bulges on it that are internal bays that keep the weapons in a stealth configuration, but that's going to bleed off energy a little bit faster. It's kind of like how you would think of the conformal fuel tanks on an F-15E. They're hanging out there in space and they're just creating more drag as that aircraft tries to turn, tries to outrate, tries to get its nose on the other aircraft first. So you are going to have a little bit of a detriment with dogfighting, with the F-35 not having the same thrust vectoring capability as the Su-57 does. So if you're in an engagement, here we go, beyond visual range. These two beasts are meeting most likely during the night, or let's say it's some situation in Syria where lines are crossed and an intercept is happening where both of these jets are going to look at potentially shooting each other beyond visual range. Not a good day, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how powerful is the radar in each one of these aircraft. Again, the Su-57 is probably going to be relying on ground-based radars to help get its AESA radar up to a level that could compete with the F-35. The F-35 is going to be using a lot of different systems in the battle space to try to get lock on as well. Plus, the AESA radar is most likely more advanced than the F-35. So I'm looking at a first launch opportunity going to the F-35 in this situation. And even if the AESA radar in the Su-57 is able to see the F-35, you're looking at a situation where that radar might not be able to hold lock because of the stealth capability of the F-35. And that stealth capability is going to be way more advantageous for the F-35 pilot, basically being able to disappear at certain radar aspects, whereas a Su-57 most likely is going to be detected for its entire time, no matter what aspect it's looking at the F-35 from. So let's say there's some sort of identification issue, these jets don't shoot each other beyond visual range and they get into a merge. This is where things get a little bit spicy because it's going to come down to a lot of different factors. Who's the better pilot? Who has more training in dogfighting? Most likely, not for sure, but most likely the F-35 pilot's going to have more dogfighting experience, whereas the Western motto is you start with dogfighting. That's kind of your number one thing, and then you build out from there to beyond visual range. Whereas when it comes to Russia, when you have less flight hours, you essentially do the opposite, where you train the pilots BVR, beyond visual range, and then you train some of the elite pilots in a smaller cadre of pilots to actually have the finesse and the fine-tuned motor skills to do dogfighting. So depending on what pilots meet is going to determine a lot of it. How many flight hours does that Su-57 pilot have going through the situations of turning that Su-57 into a helicopter that can basically stop and turn on a dime, and while doing that being able to get visual acuity and lock on and not losing sight, because that F-35 is going to probably dive for the deck, be fighting for its life, doing everything it can to get a high off bore sight shot with an AIM-9 or some way to get the Su-57 to lose sight. So at the end of the day, the maneuverability advantage will go to the Su-57, but who's the better pilot is most likely going to determine the outcome and who's victorious in this situation. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Comment below if you liked it, and we'll see you on the next video. Hey, what's up guys? Ryan here. Thanks so much for checking out that video. Please comment on the video, like and share, and subscribe to the channel. It just helps me grow the channel and I can keep making videos like this. I've got a series of these videos. So J-20, Su-57, F-22, F-35, all going head to head against each other that I think you'll enjoy. Thanks so much for checking out this video, and I'll see you on one of these videos over here. Let's go. Have a great day. We'll see you on that video.